Okay, good morning. So the purpose of this meeting was just to get together with all the project management team and kind of walk through the construction process, like documentation and project management, and just give you an overview of everything that project management does, from project admins to project engineers to project assistant project managers to project management to senior project management to project executive. This process is an overview of everything, and it's a general overview, but it points to the key elements that we're going to be focusing on. So this will be kind of a roadmap of where we're going and where we're going to develop ourselves in each one of these pieces. So feel free as we go through each one of the slides that if there's any questions, feel free to ask questions about, well, who on our team is currently doing that, or who does that, and what is the, let's say, the condition of satisfaction of, where's that stored, or how would we know if we did a good job at that? Any of those type of questions as we go through this process. Is there any questions before we begin? No. Okay, we'll launch right in.
No.
Okay, so up on your screen, when we go through this kind of process flowchart map, this is the legend. We're going to be talking about documents that the GC and architect is the author, so they're the original creators of, and they generate those documents. And we're going to talk about documents that DMS is the author. This is where project management or any of the project management team, we create those documents and send to the client and upkeep and maintain. So in talking about the general contractors, they have you're going to see a symbol like this, their stuff's going to be in gold. These documents, any other like individual document will be listed in that symbol. And then there's also components of a document, which we'll talk further about. If there's 3D documents, we'll have a 3D box symbol. And for DMS's documents, our documents that are really critical, we're going to be in blue, and it's going to look kind of like a spreadsheet is going to be the symbol that the documents that we create and author. The components of a document, if a document if it has status change from open, and this is what it would look like if it's closed. Okay. So we're going to talk about the estimating team, what the estimating team does, and then in regards to project management / change management, what our kind of process and scope is, and the third component, field and constructability management. We're not going to go deep into, we're going to barely cover the field and constructability. We're really going to focus on the estimating and project management aspects of construction. So there's different aspects, or kind of 3 different key factors that what we look at in regards to construction management. One of it is information, the other is time, and the other is money. And so anything that we're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at information, time, and money, and how the information affects time and money, or what are the components of that inside of what we're doing. So from the estimator, this is what Chris and Ben and John and Dave Schmidt and myself all work on the estimating process. So general contractor asks us to bid a project. They'll send over some drawings. They'll send over specs. So the drawings is a visual representation of the project. Specs is the manual, or think of it as the recipe of how to build the project. And then there's usually a lot of safety documents and safety requirements. Sometimes they'll ask for BIM, and BIM stands for Building Information Management. It is a 3-dimensional set of documents that allows you to tour, for them to create the project virtually and walk through that project and find clashes. You'll hear terms like, where's your model at? They'll bring all the models from all the different trades together, and then they'll do what they call a coordination meeting, which will then lead to clash detection. So when they put all the models together, are there any parts and pieces that are in the same place at the same time? And how does that work, and who needs to move and adjust. The reason why general contractors and owners prefer that is if they can alleviate the conflicts in advance, it allows the building team, the field, when they build, to work unconstrained, which means the projects are more profitable and they're less likely for any schedule delays. So they've moved let's figure out the problems as early as they can. And that's what we're doing on Los Medanos, and we're investigating about that on West Side recycled water treatment. And this is becoming a standard in our industry. So you have the actual physical documents, and then you've got 3D documents that they're sending out. You'll hear terms like CAD, Revit, Navisworks, DWG drawings, things like that. As they send out these documents, as new information comes in, they have addendums, RFIs, ASIs, CCDs, and ACDs. In construction, there's a lot of acronyms. You'll hear lots of different abbreviations and acronyms. So an addendum, an RFI, ASI, CCD, and ACD are all terms for documents that are modifying or enhancing, changing additional information to the sets of drawings and specs. So the estimator has to look at all that information and make sure that what we are bidding, that we've incorporated all that information up to a certain point, so that when we sign our contract, that the general contractor has a snapshot that everybody's on the same page looking at the same document from all the trades. And then an estimator may generate their own RFIs. So an estimator during the bidding process will ask RFIs to bring clarifications. The general contractor may ask subcontractor to generate RFIs so that the team gets clear about, example might be a question about schedule, or a question about what's happening at the soffits, an exterior soffit, if it's going to be built a certain way. Those questions may come up all part of the estimating process, and then finally finalized and put into the contract. The other component is time. So for scheduling, they'll produce what they call a master schedule. And from that schedule, the key things that we want to be looking at as an estimating and project management team is the sequencing and durations. So durations is how long we have for each task, and the sequence is the order in which we're going to do the task. I've been on a project where they had the exterior go after the interior, and that created a lot of conflicts, and there was a big court battle because they said, we informed you we were going to be building this project this way, so your price had to reflect on the way we're going to be building it, with lots of mobilizations. Phasing would be another. Phasing is part of the sequencing aspect. So those are the components we want to be looking at when we're looking at the schedule: is what is the sequence and what is the duration. And then on the money side is estimators look at all that information and they compose what they call an estimate or a bid proposal. So if we're creating an estimate or a bid, or what we refer to sometimes as a hard bid, that means that we're putting this in and it's not really flexible. This is the amount based upon the contract documents, so it gives us a snapshot. Some of the components to the bid is our labor costs, our material costs, miscellaneous costs around equipment or additional resources needed. Could be BIM, could be shop drawings, could be specialty items. And then the overhead and the profit component. Now on this drawing, you'll see that I put labor as a really long bar. Labor is about 60 to 70% of our costs on projects. So managing our labor or our labor force is a critical component for us to be successful and profitable on the projects. So that's what Dave Legier and we focus on, is looking at those components to make sure how this is allocated. And with Pro Contractor being implemented and all that, that's going to help us give some more visibility in regards to the labor costs on our projects. So if an estimator, when they create their bid proposal, let me back up, that during that process up here at the top, you can see up here at the top, the general contractor will issue us a letter of intent or a notice to proceed. The reason why they'd issue us a letter of intent and a notice to proceed, that's the document that gets us initiated saying you've been selected as our subcontractor. We are just formalizing our contract, getting all the documents and everything in order in place to send over a contract. So they'll want us to not delay. They'll send us over a letter of intent and notice to proceed. That kind of launches us. And then after that, they will give us a contract. Now, this contract, I chose this symbol because it's like, this is the, like a 10 Commandment tablet, that once the contract, it bakes in all the items that you've seen here, the drawings, the specs, addendums, RFIs, scheduling, all of our bid proposal, all that gets baked in and goes through a contract review. Currently right now, Chelsea, myself, and Dave Schmidt are, and sometimes the estimators will go through the contract review price to make sure that what we sent out as the estimating is what we want to agree to. And when we do that, it then leads into the project management piece. On the project management piece, once a contract's been agreed to, or we're in the process of looking at, we're starting it up, we're going to do the job startup, which is our DMS start sheets, job folder creation, getting things in PlanGrid, all those items. It's pretty extensive in regards to the getting everything set up for each of the departments, bond, insurance, and we're not going to go heavy into the bond and insurance and OSIPs and prevailing wage and payroll and safety and all that. But the job startup takes a considerable amount of time to get everything set up, because we're going to be feeding the rest of the project management team. We're feeding the rest of the accounting and HRs and all the rest of the teams, as well as the field team. Whatever we do here is going to be reflected out. So the job setup when we start a project can be, I don't want to say time consuming. It's a critical component for each one of these jobs. So if 3 jobs got awarded to us, going through the contract review and then getting them set up and getting them logged into all the locations, that is the part of maintaining that setup and maintaining it to where we get all the items complete that are necessarily to get complete. So right now, I think Chelsea, we'll start with Chelsea knows how to do job setup, Allison knows how to do job setup, and Vanessa is learning to do job setup and all those parts and pieces that are needed to that. We've recently made the change from Bluebeam into PlanGrid. So the documents getting uploaded into PlanGrid, we're going to be modifying some of our startup process to include PlanGrid and having that put in. Any questions about anything we've covered so far? No? Okay. So on the project management side, we're going to be looking at the information, the time, and the money components of what the contract, what the estimator and everything did in their contract. So we'll start off with information. Information, we usually start off with submittals. So as you see from this is submittals is the document that we submit, and it's going to be in open status. Submittals can be extensive depending on the scope of work. So we have lots of different scopes of work. or just one scope of work. In those different aspects of the scopes of work, the submittal process can be ongoing for months. I've done submittals to where it's taken 1.5 years to get all the submittals completed on a project. Because of the way things were phased and because of the requirements, it was multiple rounds of, you submitted this, is that approved? We need samples, things like that. So the submittal process is the process in which we are submitting documents based upon the information that was given to us by the general contractor. So we'll create submittals and we'll create a submittal log. Now, the submittal log, we're using the submittal cover sheet as kind of a sense for that. At other companies I've worked at, we've done submittal logs, just to give us a status update of where these submittals at, if the submittals are extensive. And we'll talk more about that at another point in time. But usually submittals live on a submittal log, and we use the submittals that we submit, we verify against the specs. So the spec section's determining all of our products, and it's determining all of our how we need to install it. So our submittals need to be in compliance with the specs, and it needs to be in compliance with the drawings. So sometimes the spec section isn't necessarily a match for the drawings. So there may be something called out in the drawings, specifically, let's say it says Durock, but our spec section, we don't have a spec section for it, or what's called out in the spec section is different than what's called out in the drawings. Because the architecture and GC, they focus heavily on the drawings, there's a whole nother department that works on specifications. And sometimes the two don't talk. So when we are going through our contract and we're going through project management, when we're actually beginning to launch the project, we're checking for those and seeing discrepancies. An example of that we've been, usually we can currently see over and over again, is drywall ceilings or suspended ceilings. Most contractors don't have a suspended ceiling spec inside of their project, and yet they'll ask us to do that, and then they'll ask us to submit that spec section for approval. Please keep in mind that the general contractor and owner is trying to manage, like, on average over 70 subcontractors, all at different phases. So they're trying to herd the cats around all this information, saying, here's what we got, and they're trying to get the documents in line with the drawings. Sometimes the drawings are more accurate than the specs, and sometimes the specs are more accurate than the drawings. So getting that clear is where project management and our development and our skill set will be looking, going, well, how well are we looking at submittals and making sure that we're in compliance. Now, once a submittal has been approved, it will come into closed status, and then that item is complete. And there may be another submittal that we need to submit in regards to a different scope of work. Let's say we finished our submittals for the gypsum, but then we have submittals in regards to plaster. So this submittal process can be extensive, and it's going to be ongoing. Shop drawings is another aspect that when we get new information, they'll ask us to submit it in the submittal process for the architect's review and approval. So shop drawings, engineered shop drawings, coordinated shop drawings, there's lots of different types of shop drawings. What a shop drawing is literally a drawing that was not created by the architect. The architect creates all the blueprints and drawings and design for the project. A shop drawing is basically a drawing that was created by a subcontractor or a different designer that gets implemented into the project. Okay, was there any questions?
I was just clarifying the shop drawings.
Oh, okay. Next is RFIs. So RFIs stands for Request for Information. Now, when I say RFI, it also incorporates, well, we generate what we call a request for information. So this is basically our list of questions. If we have a question about something, we have to put it on what we refer to as an RFI form, and we ask that question. That question then goes on to an RFI log. So we do an RFI log to track our RFIs. We might be asking hundreds of questions. We might be asking 2 or 3 questions. It all just kind of depends and varies on the project size and scope. But we ask RFIs that goes into the general contractor's RFI, ASI, CCD, ACD logs. So RFI number 1, we ask a question, RFI number 1 will turn into their RFI number 86. So our numbering, because we are one of the scopes that occur later on the project, by the time we ask the question, the general contractor has to renumber our question, maybe even rephrase it to send it over to the architect. So RFI 1 becomes their RFI 86, and RFI 86 gets answered, and we have to update, their log gets updated, and that log then updates us. So sequencing RFIs is project management has to continuously maintain, because new information is coming out and we have to be able to assess that. So RFI. So RFI is a request for information, and ASI is architectural supplemental information. And what that means is that the architect is providing new information, meaning no one has asked the question. They're just saying, hi, here's some new information that has come out that you will need to review. If you're dealing in hospital work, an ASI can be called a construction change document. That's what a CCD is. And an ACD is an amended construction document. They all relate to the same thing. It's new information that is going to affect the drawings or specs. And it needs to be reviewed and evaluated to determine how that's going to affect the project. So as we submit RFIs, if we get the RFIs answered, it will go into a closed status. And then we may write, the RFIs will then check against, we'll be syncing constantly RFIs in regards to how it is on the GC logs and how it is in regards to the drawings. So that is a continuous maintenance process. That's where, when we were talking about guide dogs, Allison's been working with the RFIs and updating the sets of drawings to make sure that our field team has the latest, greatest, and is building to the current set of drawings. All this information can be in flux, and some questions we may ask may take months to get answered, and then when the answer comes out, we'll know how to proceed, but we may have already built something at the time. So knowing where managing this information and managing how it gets to the field and where the state of construction is a critical component for us just managing the information. We're going to be learning about lots of different scopes. We're going to be learning about lots of other different trades, because we're not the only subcontractors that are asking questions. You've got the mechanical, the plumbing, electrical, tile, flooring, kitchen cabinetry, FF&E, landscaping, civil, structural, all those different trades are asking questions that we have to evaluate to see if that's affecting our scope of work. Example would be, let's say they moved a column over 2 feet. You might think, oh, it's a structural column. That isn't going to affect us. However, that structural column has now rerouted the walls. So it looks like a structural, the structural trade gets mostly affected, but it's now relaid out the walls into a different way, which does affect us because we're the walls and ceilings builders. And so we might ask additional RFIs. So we're going to have RFIs that are going to be in a closed status, and we're going to have RFIs in an open status, and they're going to be synced against the general contractor's RFIs. Now, worth noting, they will refer to this as document management. Where do they keep all these documents? They keep all those documents. They used to be able to track it all through email, and now they're using different computer programs. So the computer programs that general contractors are now tending to use is Procore. So Procore is where they're keeping all their documents and managing all this. Another one is called Kahua, K-A-H-U-A. Kahua is another place where they're doing their document management. PlanGrid is a spot where they're doing their document management. They've also used Box, Dropbox, different contractors use different softwares to manage the documents and information process. I'm trying to think. There's multiple different ones out there. So when project management comes in, we have to learn where they're communicating and sending through. So right now, Guide Dogs is using Procore, and they're keeping all their information inside of Procore. This is where all this documentation lives. And I think there's 2 other ones that are using Procore, and I saw that one of our general contractors is using Kahua, which means that we'll need usernames and passwords in order to access that information. Any questions about the information component?
Oh, what was the ACD called again?
An ACD is the amended construction document or an amended change document. Sorry, not amended, I apologize. Approved change document. That it used to be called an ASI, and then in the hospital, the OSHPD world, which stands for the Organization of Safety and Health for Hospital Directors, they've changed it to ACD. So they've relabeled it so that it can encompass more than just architectural information. They've used it to be a change document saying anything can change one of our documents and we need to be proved. So it's just a tagging system for numbering to say this change document has an effect. But all of them kind of mean the same thing. There's new information. It just depends on who's the author and who's approving it. It'll get a different label.
Okay.
Good question. Any other question about information?
No.
So on our team right now, regards to generating submittals, Chelsea knows how to generate submittals, Allison knows how to generate submittals, and Vanessa is going to be learning how to generate submittals. I'm not sure if Celine has been part of I don't think Celine has been part of the submittal process in generating submittals.
No, I have not.
Okay. And then in regards to the RFI log and maintaining a project in the RFI, currently that's been Chelsea and Allison. Celine, have you been part of any RFI processes in the process? And Vanessa, that's new to you, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's jump into the time aspect of project management. Once we have a contract and we have a master schedule, they will provide a different schedule, a more granular, broken down point of view. I've seen schedules to be thousands of pages long. So on the master schedule, they'll do a big overview of the project, and then as they're moving through the project, they will break the schedule down into more granular levels so that everybody can see their sequencing and different pieces. So looking at the sequencing component on a master schedule is different than looking at the 3-week look-ahead schedule that the general contractor will produce. This 3-week look ahead schedule is usually done every single week during their what they call a subcontractors coordination meeting. The general contractor looks at it every week, saying, where are we at now? What are the components that need to be, what are the things that we need to be focusing on? What are the safety risks? They have to make sure that no one's building on top of each other. So if someone's on the 3rd floor and they're drilling a hole from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor, they want to make sure no one's on the 2nd floor and is going to get hit by anything as they drill down. A lot of overhead work in regards to cranes, things flying overhead, people drilling, people what they call coring. So when you get on multiple floor projects, they can be extremely dangerous because there's so many people working on so many different levels. And if somebody does not want something well, it'll transfer down. So they will look at 3-week look ahead schedules in regards to procuring material, what's going to be happening, sequencing the building. And we want to be looking at the sequencing component of that. Go what happened from the master schedule into the 3-week look ahead, and did our durations get affected? In regards to, let's just talk about durations for our scope of works. The general rule of thumb is on a master schedule, they will give us 10 days for framing per floor or area. They will give us 5 days for installing drywall, and they will give us 10 days for taping or finishing the drywall. Those are general blocked out rules of thumbs for our scope of work. When it comes to actually building and we get into the granular level, the framing component is not 10 days consecutively. It's usually 4 to 5 days, months prior to doing the interior wall framing. So they'll ask us to come out and do layout, do shafts work, any kind of exterior work, then going into interior work. That once we build the walls, all the electricians and everything have to put everything inside of it. And then about 6 to 8 weeks later, they'll want us to do the ceilings. So from the framing side, you have lots of different, there's three basic phasings for framing. They'll want us to go in, do the fire rated areas and get those approved, which will allow the electricians and mechanical and other plumbing, other critical trades to move forward. And then they'll ask us to come in and do the interior wall building. So we'll actually build the walls, and then there'll be a 3 or 4 week delay, and then they'll ask us to come in and build the ceilings. So for framing, those are the 3 big kind of the way they chunk out framing. In regards to drywall, they chunk it out. I've seen them do it one of 2 ways. The first way is they'll ask us to do one side, meaning we'll install the drywall on one side, which will allow all the other MEPs and everything to get inside the walls. They'll be able to do inspections. Once everything's then approved, they will then refer to it as second side or wall close-up. Once we then do the other wall close-up, then the wall is ready to receive taping. The component with regards to drywall, we have to make sure that the building is dried in. I saw an example of that with, I think, Sutter or Central Elementary School, where the building was not completely dried in. They don't have windows and certain things in, and it rained, and all the standing water is now seeping into the drywall, which creates water damage. When there's water damage, that means you got to rip down drywall. There needs to be fans, and you have to reinstall drywall. Their concern is mold spores. If mold grows into the wall, it may take weeks or months until it becomes visible. And if there's tenants or a school, if there's any mold that's in the air, they may have to demo whole sections again and redo stuff at the time of class. So they're very sensitive about those things in trying to sequence it. They want to go as fast as they can, At the same time, there's some risks, but they want to mitigate those risks and be able to do that. So knowing where our schedule's at and where things are happening is another critical component to looking at a project and maintaining. Any questions about the time aspect and schedule aspect?
Nope, not for most.
Okay. If I was to ask right now who on our team is looking at that component on our projects, because you see that the information piece up here from submittals and RFIs is a tremendous amount of work to reading and understanding and comprehending the information and getting it logged. The schedule component, I don't know if that has been heavily focused on at this point in time. So that's in our growth as in your career paths of learning to manage, project manage. This is another component you could be looking at of, oh, well, how do I understand my schedules, and how do I understand durations, and how do I understand sequencing? That will give you another element and component in developing to become project managers. Now let's talk about the money component. For the money component, we take the bid proposal with all the components of labor, material, miscellaneous, overhead, and profit, and that gets pushed out to create what they refer to as a schedule of values, or a list of values for them to understand how many different buckets of money there are. Buckets of money related to the actual building. First floor is worth this much, framing's worth this much, framing, drywall's worth this much, and taping's worth this much. So schedule values is usually always based in dollars, and that schedule values is currently being created by David Schmidt, myself, and Chelsea. We are taking all that and creating the schedule values. So we need to create a schedule values for the
SFO parking garage.
SFO parking garage. There's also CMD, the the military department.
With Walsh.
Yeah, with Walsh, they're asking for that. So currently right now, me and Chelsea are working on that and creating our forms and evaluating that project. And that's a very critical component in dealing with money, because it leads to the billing process. Whatever we say our values are, and they approve it, and that can go through 2 or 3 rounds. Oh, we like this, lower this, bring this up, this doesn't make sense, please clarify that. That creating the schedule of values, getting that finally approved, once that's set, it will lead into the billing process that every month that we then ask for money, we put in a invoice or a pay application. Brooke is the person, is that right, Chelsea? Brooke's the person on our team that currently submits in the actual pay applications.
That's right.
Okay, so Brooke is looking for information from project managers and our field team to give them information of saying, okay, if you imagine that you had a $5 million job and it was going to last 5 months, they don't pay us $5 million right out the gate. They want to break it up into segments to say, okay, well, how much is it? Well, on average, using just simple math, if you had a $5 million project and it was 5 months long, you would have an average billing of $1 million a month. That's if you average it out. Now, if you've ever seen a bell curve, we tend to bill a little bit in the beginning, then in the middle we bill a lot, and then towards the end we bill a little bit, it starts to curve down. So knowing where that we refer to as cash flow, meaning money coming in and our expenses going out, project managers, and particularly senior project managers, deal with this component. As you can see, there's lots going on up here, round and round and round, from submittals to RFIs to schedules, and what's the updating and updating and updating. The schedule of values and the billing is the component that happens once a month, but all this information will tie into it. So we create percentages, and that goes back and forth, and that puts a tremendous amount of stress on Brooke and Chelsea and David Schmidt, because we're trying to see, well, how much money can we ask for and what will be approved? And it's a predicting component. Now, I'm going to bring up something it's an advanced component of management. This is like senior project managers would be able to do this, that looking at your billing and comparing it to your 3-week look ahead schedule and to your master schedule, it allows us to give leverage for any delays. An example of that would be Delta. The Delta project, when we're submitting what percent we are complete to ask for how much money we want to receive in a month, when we're looking at the schedules and we see that we're behind or delayed compared to the master schedules, there's an opportunity for us to say, look, we're not responsible for the delay, and 2, that now that this is delay, we built our entire manpower plan or labor force plan and material plan based upon your original schedule. Example would be, we were going to be building in March, April, May, per the original master schedule, contract schedule. But now the project has slid back and we're not building until August and September. There may be a labor rate increase or also a material increase that we wouldn't have incurred if we would have built when we said we were going to build. But because we've built after when we said we were going to build, there's additional costs that were occurring due to this schedule slide. So that is on a high level where project managers can look at that and see how this information and how the time component can affect our billing. It can affect how we're going to price, can affect manpower allocation in the delivery of the project. And so right now, Chelsea and I are doing this in the opportunities to growth into project management. You'll be trained. We'll be doing trainings on schedule values, how to assess a schedule value, how to set this up, and learning all the different terminology in regards to billing. Billing traditionally uses what they refer to as an AIA form, which is the American Institute of Architects form. There'll be other different billing forms. One of the trends that we're seeing now is they're using what they refer to as Textura. So the general contractor is using computer software instead of everybody passing in PDFs and emailing them to the general contractor who's compiling it. They now have a computer software that the subcontractors just enter their information into a computer system, so it saves on the data entry and it allows for faster and more accurate billings. And then the billing process happens every month. Traditionally, the billing cycle is at the end of the month. They'll ask us on the 20th to submit our billing and predict out to the end of the month. So they're asking us to predict 10 days into the future of where we think we're going to be at, and how we predict 10 days in the future is based upon the schedule. And if the schedule isn't reflecting what we're actually going to be billing, we're going to run into some clashes. Example would be, I say we're going to be done with the 3rd floor according to the schedule, and then when they actually go walk the job, the 3rd floor is not done. They'll ask us to revise our billing. They said, you're asking for too much money because the 3rd floor is not done. We said, well, we did that compared to your schedule, but that means that there's a delay. Something's happening that's delaying your project because we were anticipating being done with the 3rd floor, and it's not. Another example would be shop drawings. We predict out we're going to have shop drawings to be completed by the end of the month, so we ask for the billing. If the shop drawings are not completed by the end of the month, they may revise our billing or reject that particular line item because we didn't fulfill it within that month and incur those costs within that month. What's also worth noting is with project managers is that sometimes different projects, whether it be school projects or city projects, sometimes they go on different billing cycles, which means that sometimes they go from the 15th to the 15th, some go for the 1st to the 1st, some go 30th to 30th, some go in 20-day cycles. They'll just go, you need to bill every 20-day cycles. So that process is usually in the contract and needs a level of focus to manage how money flows. That's what Brooke and Chelsea and I are focusing on, are those components. Kate, any questions about the schedule of values and billing?
No.
Okay. All right. The next piece is when the estimate has been created, there's also going to be a component of creating a field labor budget in hours. That's a component that we're not currently doing, but I'm just putting it on your horizon, that it will be a piece that will be, once pro contractors finally stabilized and set up, this will be a component that our field will be looking at in regards to labor budgets. They want to know how much time is allocated for framing, hanging, and taping on their project so that they can manage their crews to hit those targets. And then from the labor field budget, we'll create a labor performance report. So this is the dashboard or the tracking mechanism that lets us know how well we're doing on the project. Meaning, if we estimated saying that there was 100 hours to frame a floor and the guys spent 60 hours, you could make some assumptions that they're about 60% complete. Now, when we talk to our guys in the field, I say, look, how much longer is it going to take for you to do this, or referred to as your cost to complete? They will say, oh, I need another 60 hours in order to complete this amount of work. Well, we only had 100 hours in the budget. We've spent 60, and they want another 60, which means that we are going to be 20 hours over budget, which means that we are going to spend more money than we had allocated. And that is an indicator of why are we spending more money than what was allocated. Either there was the way that it was bid was too aggressive, or something is happening on the project that is not allowing us to build productively. And that is the first signs where project management will then step in and say, hey, whoa. The first floor, we had 100 hours to build this. We've spent 60 and we are only halfway done. And we're supposed to be 60% done. Hey, I need to go talk to the general contractor to find out what's causing this delay, because I can't have this happen on additional areas or different floors. And if we're going to go at this rate, we're not going to make money on this project the way we thought, and we need to get additional help involved. That's where I come in. We'll go out and meet with the GCs. This is where Dave Legier and David Schmidt come in, that when this report comes out, they'll be able to provide us some insight to let us know if we're on track or not on track with the way that we allocated labor. Now, the reason why we focus on labor is 60 to 70% of our cost. So it's a big component for us to be focused on. This is a new element that will be being brought into the company once we get pro contractor set up.
It's a new element that is one of the most important elements in terms of money. And
Yes.
it's not set up yet. So.
Correct. Yep.
Labor, and it's the biggest component of the project.
Yeah. And this will allow project managers and the whole company know how well we're doing on the project. It'll let us know what percent a rough sense of where we are complete. It'll let us know what costs are being implicated. This particular piece gives us a dashboard to seeing the project, again, the labor portion, seeing where we're at. This dashboard provides a lot of insights, and it lets us guide and get ahead of challenges before the end of the project, when we go, oh, we ran out of money. How did you run out of money? When did you know? When you were halfway or a quarter of the way or three-quarters? No, we didn't know until the very end. It's like, oh, this component allows us to do that. And we'll go through different trainings on that. But that's what's going to be up and coming in regards to project management. Now, again, I put on here, this is internal. So this bit of information is not shared with the general contractor. This bit of information is just shared internally and with our field team. And it's usually represented in hours, usually never dollars. Okay, let's now talk about back up to the RFIs. As RFIs come in, let's say there's an RFI that got answered and it affects us. So I put this one up here in red to focus here, that if an RFI comes in and affects us, which means that the project manager has to understand the scope, has to understand the constructability, has to understand the terminology, has to understand the sequencing and the state of construction, that when that RFI is evaluated, that if there's a change, this is referred to as the revisions or changes component. So project management is looking at what was originally set out in the contract, and we're trying to manage everything in the contract as well as any changes to that. So we're doing kind of a double, twofold item here. If no one asks a question and nothing changed on the project, it would take a certain amount of effort to manage the contract through to completion. If there's information that changes it, it modifies all these documents. This RFI modifies the drawings, could modify the specs, it modifies the schedule, and it modifies the money. So this component is this RFI is the key, or the RFI ACD ASI change document changes everything. So that RFI has to be looked at in regards to the schedule for time and money. So we want to take a look to see, is there a schedule impact based upon our sequencing, our duration, state of construction? And is there a cost impact? Are they adding walls? Is there additional labor and material in order to do that? And we create an estimate or a takeoff. Now you can create an estimate and takeoff inside a Bluebeam. You can create an estimate and takeoff on a piece of paper. You can create an estimate and takeoff in your head. You can create an estimate and takeoff on an Excel sheet. You can create an estimate and takeoff in Pro Contractor. We will be enhancing the way that we are doing estimate and taking off, and that varies from project to project. If they added 37 ceilings on a project, traditionally that is taken off on your estimating program, which is our estimating program is called Pro Contractor, so that they can visually see which ceilings got added. If they added 2 feet of wall, sometimes we just estimate on an Excel sheet, or in our heads we just say what this is, and we can provide information called a ROM, which is a rough order of magnitude, which is like just a high water mark to let them know it should be about this much. And then they'll ask for a more detailed estimate later. So that estimate or taken off, so when you create this calculation, it then leads to a PCO, or a proposed change order. Okay, we're maybe referring to as a pending change order, a proposed change order. Traditionally, our estimators send over a proposal, and when our proposal gets accepted into a contract, when we're dealing with change order documents, we send over a proposed change order, and they need to review it and make sure that it's clear. That proposed change order lives on a proposed PCO log. When we get into Pro Contractor, the terminology for this changes. And we'll talk about that more at that time. But in every company that I've worked for, this has always been a standard. Everything we're covering right now is a standard process, that you're looking at new bits of information. How does it affect the time, and how does it affect the money in our scope of work? We take that PCO, create a calculation, determine labor, material, equipment, miscellaneous items, overhead, and profit. That gets put in and sent over to the general contractor. The general contractor has their own version of a PCO log. They review their PCO log weekly with the owner and architect. So if this process is slow, then that means that other people have their hands out and are trying to collect money for change documents, and we're going to be the last on the list. And if we're last on the list, we're less likely to receive the money. So we want to actively be pursuing that, managing RFIs, getting them into PCOs, taking those PCOs and chasing those down. So, and normally I would be having very light conversations with project management team and our general contracting team to say, where are we at with the PCO log? How many items are open? How many items are closed? Which items will be closed out? What can we do about this? What can we be doing to get this resolved? When it gets resolved, the general contractor makes what they refer to as a change order. The change order number, like let's say change order number 1, can pay for either single PCOs or multiple PCOs. So you might have 5 PCOs out there, and one change order may encompass 5 PCOs. So a change order may grab all of them. This change order, when they issue change orders, they tend to issue change orders once a month. So if we're on a 5-month project, how many times are we going to receive a change order? Once a month. And that's why we need to be actively taking PCOs and putting them in the general contractor's hands to collect the change order, because if our project is only 5 months long, we're only going to have 5 opportunities to get these things resolved. And once the change order has been approved, we change the status of our PCO to now closed. That PCO feeds the accounting team, it feeds the field team, it feeds all the teams when new money has come in. And it leads to our payment process. That when a change order comes in, it has to revise our billing and be incorporated into our billing where we can collect it. And we're only able to bill once a month. So this is project management's role in being able to collect money. The money that they give us pays our paychecks. So project management's role to be able to collect money or collect change orders allows for money to come into the business, which allows David Schmidt to get paid, you guys to get paid, our vendors to get paid. This is payday. And we only get paid once a month from the general contractor. So we want to utilize being able to maximize the amount of money that we get on our paychecks in regards to the project. We want to maximize being able to get as much money in our court as we can related to our contract. So this component is what I've been hearing Chelsea refer to, is we want to be able to get change orders. So if we were to work backwards, the billing cycle traditionally starts, they want information by the 20th of the month. Today is the 7th. So 13 days from now, they're going to want to know what we're going to be billing. Between now and when they ask for our billing is the critical time for us to get these PCOs onto change orders and get the change orders incorporated into this month's billing. So for these next 2 weeks, that's what you're going to hear Chelsea and myself reviewing PCO logs and trying to understand where all these the items that are pending to get them closed so that we can get that money collected and put onto the billing. And when we submit this billing, there's a whole payment process. So once we've done the billing, doesn't mean that they sign a check that day. It means that they've approved it, and it may take them 30 to 60 days before a check actually comes in. When that happens, that means that the money, we've spent this money. We've spent the money in regards to our field. We've spent the money into operations. That David Schmidt Company is trying to collect that money because we've already spent it. Now we get an extra bonus. We get to add overhead and profit on this. So there's a little bit of a bonus. There'll be more money coming in than going out. It comes at a later date. And that's what we refer to as cash flow. How much money we have more money out than coming in on this particular month. And that's where we use bank credits and so on and so forth, or we use the money that's already coming in to be able to do this. So this critical component of being able to evaluate money and have all this come in to get on the billing is another part of the process as you're being trained as project managers. It's a critical component to having all this work. There is another scenario in regards to creating PCOs. But before I go into that, I just want to let you guys know that on this estimating and takeoff piece to create PCOs, you're basically being estimators. Chris is an estimator that's estimating work to get a contract. We're estimating work that's affecting the contract. So your ability to estimate, you will grow, and there will be an opportunity as you grow into project management. The more experience you become at project management, it can open a door leading to a career path to being an estimator. I've estimated the estimator has estimated a project that was worth, let's say, $10,000, and then things opened up on the project as a project manager where I had to estimate, I think it was $1.2 million worth of changes on this $10,000 project. So we play kind of a dual role in our ability to estimate. We're using a little more specific information than the estimator had at the time of doing the contract. So this component allows you to move over into this category based on your experience at some point in time. So I'm just bringing that up to let you know the career paths and how project management feeds into everything, and allow you opportunity that if the more you learn about estimating, the more opportunities you have to be flexible and be able to grow into the company. Okay, so then more RFIs come in, estimates, they become PCOs, PCOs get on the log, they go on the log, they get to kind of change orders, they get added to the billing. The other component is T&M tags. So as T&M tags come in, T&M stands for time and material. If we gave them an estimate and they felt our estimate was too high, or they felt that their estimate was inaccurate, or the general contractor says, look, I don't want to bog our office down with trying to understand all this information. So what we're going to do is, because this is extremely urgent, I'm going to give you direction to proceed on T&M. They could tell us, look, just do it and we'll pay you for your costs. By proceeding on T&M, there's risk here. The risk is our guys have already performed our guys are either in process or have already performed the work, and we're trying to collect the T&M tickets, get them assimilated so they can be put onto a PCO so that it can go through the process. In doing that, here's the pros of T&M. The pros of T&M, they're less likely to negotiate it because they verified the time that it took and the materials that it took. The The con or disadvantage to it is that we only get to mark it up by 15%. And it's a tremendous amount of work for us as project managers because we have to read the guys' handwriting. We have to understand what they were doing. And depending on how soon or how fast this goes, sometimes T&M has to be batched by week or month by month, saying, hi, here's all your T&M tags that happened in the month of January, and here's all the T&M that happened in the month of February. And the general contractor wants it broken out. Well, what's this issue for, and what's this issue for? So it is a tremendous amount of administration work to manage the T&M tags. And that's why it's usually more beneficial for us to do estimates than it is to do T&M. T&M is usually after the fact, and estimating is before. If we estimate before, the advantage with estimating before means that, one, we can maximize profitability because we can charge a price and our costs will be low because we'll plan based upon the amount of money that we receive. The disadvantage to that is that if we estimated inaccurately or new information became available after we agreed on this, that we could not make the money that we were imagining. T&M is a little bit safer, that we're going to be more likely to receive that money. The disadvantage is we're going to be receiving less money, and it puts more of a burden on our office to maintain and push those things out. Now, in regards to, let me see if I can. Right now on our team, Allison knows how to do, is evaluating RFIs. Chelsea knows how to evaluate RFIs. Vanessa, this is one of the areas that you'll be growing into. This isn't like an all or nothing. It's just that in time you'll be able to do this. And Celine, eventually when we're looking at career paths, we'll be looking at saying, okay, this is a component to be able to read an RFI, understand it, put it on the log, understand schedule impacts, cost impacts, create an estimate, and put it on a PCO. Right now, Chelsea and Allison are doing those pieces. I think, Vanessa, you're assisting by taking the T&M items and putting them onto the PCO log. Is that correct?
And I'm doing the PCOs too.
Oh, you're doing estimates that create PCOs in advance?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this process is what Project Manage is currently doing. Was it something I said?
No. I think she's just grabbing food real quick, and then Chelsea had to go move
Okay.
her car. It was running late, so she had to go move it from the street to her garage.
Oh, okay. Okay. So is there any questions about anything that we've covered? I know that it's a lot of different parts and pieces. I have more to give you. Just, is there any questions about what we've covered now?
I've just got a question about the PCO log, because I've seen them before. I still don't really understand exactly what they are. It just kind of seems like it's a tracking sheet for PCOs.
Correct. It is just a summary sheet that has a list of all our PCOs with critical information to allow you to do a summary of understanding what it is.
Okay. So just kind of like tracking about whether or not it's been submitted, whether or not it's been approved.
Mm-hmm.
Review. Is there anything else?
Nope, that's basically it. The PCO log is just so example would be, let's say you had 4 PCOs.
Mm-hmm.
In those 4 PCOs, PCO 1, 2, 3, and 4, PCO 1's worth $1,000, PCO 2 is worth $10,000, PCO 3 is worth $3,000, and PCO 4 is worth $4,000. That we would be able to look at that and say, David Schmidt, me, Chelsea, yourselves will be able to look and say, okay, I've got 4 PCOs. How long have they been outstanding? Have they been outstanding for a week, a month, a year? The PCO log gives us a dashboard of looking at the PCOs to say, okay, we have 4 outstanding. Here's what their issues are. Here's the days. Here's when we submitted them. How long have they been outstanding? And here's the value of each of those items. So the PCO log gives you that, and you can send your PCO log over to the general contractor, usually in a PDF form, so that you can remind them, hi, here's our list of outstanding monies owed, and we need to get this resolved in order to proceed on the project. If a PCO has been outstanding for more than a month, then that starts to raise flags, because remember, we're going to be trying to bill everything once a month. So if we're on a project that's only going to take 2 months to build, we only really got 2 shots to collect that money before we build. If it's after we've built, what we refer to as you've lost leverage, and you're like, wait, we're trying to collect money. Remember, this whole estimate was for us to collect money before we did the work, and now we're trying to collect money after we did the work. So depending on where this money cycle happens, is that we can start and stop work. Contractually, we are obligated to fulfill our contract first, which means we do not have to do extra work. We can refuse to do extra work. We say we're only going to do what's on our contract, and that's all we're going to do. This is the part where project management, you'll learn about contracts and being sophisticated enough to manage the situation of saying, how do you leverage them so that they get the sense of urgency? This needs to be answered now in order for us to proceed. Example of that would be Sergio sent in an email the other day saying, hey office, can you please get this sent over to them because I want to start on this work on Monday. He can't start on the work unless he gets the blessing of project management to say, are we going with this or not going with this? If the general contractor says your price is too high, we can refuse to do the work. We can say, well, okay, well then get somebody else to do it. And that allows us leverage so that we don't spend money where it's not necessary. If we continue to spend money and then we're trying to collect some of the stuff, there's a negotiation process that happens with PCOs that we may not be able to get as much money as we thought. And then that changes our financial projections. Good question. Was there any other questions? Did I answer your question, Allison, thoroughly?
Yeah. Oh wait, a quick question. Would guide dogs be kind of like a different situation because of the state of construction videos that we have pushed out for that?
So ask the question again. I didn't fully hear it.
So like we pushed out a couple PCOs a while ago for guide dogs.
Mm-hmm.
What would the urgency be on actually collecting that money since the state of construction hasn't really started yet?
Correct. Because we don't have any expenses out there, that's, yeah, we're not in a risk situation.
And plus they could probably change their mind too and be like, no, well, we don't want to do this, so we'll just void your, right?
Yep. Well, in looking at this process, is a very good question. If everybody can hear what she's saying, is that just because we're not spending money on it, the advantage is that if we collect the money or if we get the amount approved, it will go onto a change order here. And if it goes onto the change order, that change order can go onto the billing. That means that we don't necessarily have to put a percentage against it, but the value has been approved. So example would be, let's say on guide dogs, let's say there was $10,000 worth of changes. If they approve those changes, we have it on our billing because we have to revise our billing, our schedule, we have to revise our billing form to include these changes. We've agreed on the values, and now it's not negotiable. It's there, and so when that time comes, we can just put percentages onto it. Oh, we're 50% done with that change, charge 50%. So getting it negotiated, getting it clarified, getting it approved, all the way to getting onto the billing sheet, even though we haven't spent any money, is our ideal situation. We want to get ahead of it so it's on all our forms before we start incurring costs. That's ideal. So the urgency is not necessarily due to make sure that we're capturing money. We're going to be ahead of it, that it's negotiated. So when this happens, all the rest of the teams that are downstream, the the bookkeeping and accounting, all that's set in place so that we just have to put a percentage in and we'll be able to collect it. Doing this in the month of when billing is due, it's a tremendous task for Brooke and Chelsea and the accounting team to go, wait, you have this billing. Now you got to want me to revise the billing. You want me to include this change order? Have they agreed on the number? Okay, and once you agree on the number, did you agree on the percentage? Oh, you didn't agree. Okay, we agreed there's a $10,000 change, but you guys say you're 75% done. The GC might say you're only 60. So then there's a whole nother a whole nother synchronizing to get clear on that. So that process can take days and even weeks to get finalized. Did that answer your question, Allison? It's a good question. Okay. So the more we can do in advance, that's the more we're going to be progressing. Now, all this ties into what I'm going to refer to as the company overview. This is where me, Chelsea, and David Schmidt look at the company overall, not just by, this is just a project view as for one single project. We want to be looking at the company overall. So as a company overall view, we want to be looking at the estimating teams in regards to their bid logs. We're going to be looking at their bid schedules. This is not something that project managers do. This is something that Chelsea and Schmidt and I do. We try to look and say, how much is coming down the pipeline in regards to estimating so that it doesn't flood the project management team, or we get a sense of sequencing of where we're at with the project management team to understand workload. Oh, we just landed 20 projects. Well, we need to hire 10 more project managers to handle this much workload. This gives us the ability to forecast and see ahead. In regards to, I don't know if anything I'm doing on screen is blocking anything, but
We can see it.
okay. So on your PCO logs, as project managers, managing the PCO log, knowing where that's at, knowing how much money's collected, knowing how much money's outstanding, knowing how much money if it's going on to the billing, that piece leads down over here to give us a company overview that we can literally just look at your PCO log and be able to know where we're at financially on the project, which will tie into another item called a monthly work in progress report. Project managers do what's referred to as a WIP report, that we look at the money, costs, and projections of where this project's going to be at to determine profitability. This is a new component that will be being brought in with Pro Contractor, that when we get this component put in, all our PCO logs will feed into a what referred to as a WIP report, which all project managers will be able to report out on the status of their projects. So you'll be able to say, hey, I got a $10,000 project. We've spent $5,000. We're anticipating we're only going to spend $3,000, which leaves us with $2,000 in profit. From that, Chelsea, Schmidt, and I will be able to look at every single project as a collective whole to understand where they're at, where their billing's at, which is another component, is that all these billings live on a billings log to understand what was month one's billing, what was month two's billing, which then leads into a monthly backlog report. From this, we'll be able to predict, we'll be able to say, this is what the work that we currently have on our plate and the profitability of those projects and the cash flow of those projects. And then the billing log allows us to forecast money coming in on those. You may have heard David Schmidt talk about, well, if all these jobs that they are starting at the end of the year, there's a tax advantage that if we get these jobs started in January and February. Now, we're not totally in control of that, but we want to look at advantages to say, well, if all this money's coming in, well, if we start all this work, remember the billing cycle, we're going to ask for all this work, we're going to ask for this money in November and December, but he's not actually going to receive a check until January or February. Now, I'm not sure how we do our bonus structures, but if we get Christmas bonuses or holiday bonuses, if he knows that money's not coming in until January or February, that may affect some decision making in regards to, hey, there's no money in the bank account, I can't pay anybody out until that time. Now, I'm being a bit dramatic and trying to just make the point that how money can affect and influence decision making as a company overall, going, well, if we don't have money available, that means we can't buy additional trucks, hire additional people, do different things that we want to be doing if the money's not happening until 2019. So this is where we all look at that as the overview of each one of the projects and begin to predict stuff out. I'm giving you those extreme examples. I don't think any of that happens at DMS currently, but we want to be able to look at the company and how each project contributes to the success of the company. And then the final piece is the weekly labor performance report. Sorry, I've got an alarm going off here. The weekly labor performance report, which is this item here. This is where Dave Legier, one of his main focuses, or our general superintendents, their main focus is to be watching how money is spent through labor hours. Are we being productive? And that report feeds into all these other reports and lets us know. And there's a predicting tool called the labor projection report, where we're forecasting how many guys are we going to have, where are they going to be at. So it allows us to ramp up. If we have like the Kern project, which is a $6 million project, we're going to be doing exterior framing, and the value of that is about $2 million. It allows Dave Legier the ability to say, okay, I need to start hiring or buying equipment before we get to that place, and allows us to plan for the year. Oh, can we buy stuff in the summer before it gets to winter, and we can get discounts on equipment or things like that before we actually need it? So this is where we're able to take advantage of being able to look and forecast. So these are the key components to the company overview, which, like I said, Chelsea Schmidt and I are going to be focusing on and working on in developing. Roles as project management is to do all of this and feed into the company overview of what we're looking at as the entire company. So I'm going to be working with Chelsea to develop all these things while we're also managing all these projects, while also developing all the departments. So I know there's a lot on our plates, and there's a lot of opportunity to grow and learn. With that being said, being able to have us focus is going to be a critical component. And so everything that you see in blue here is what project management is going to be doing continuously. On this slide, I wanted to show that this is, I mean, you can see the amount of work that's involved, from contract to understanding BIM to understanding schedules to understanding these components. This is where in your evaluation of yourselves as on the project management team, your evaluation on your career path to say, well, where am I at and where do I need to be developed? This gives us kind of a roadmap to say, look, I need to learn more about billing. I need to learn more about PCO logs. I need to learn more about scheduling. I need to learn more about submittals. I need to learn more about RFIs. All that will come into view, and you guys have already been working with some of this, but to be able to become really competent and be able to be developed to where you'd be able to create schedule values by yourself, where you'd be able to manage your PCO logs by yourself, being able to influence billing by yourselves. All that is where we're kind of heading. As a more summarized view, these are the first stages of understanding construction, is being able to do submittals, do RFIs, schedules, PCO logs, and the billing process. All of these items feed into additional reports that are going to be critical reports. Let me see if I have any more. I think that's it for my slide presentation. Okay. Is there any questions about anything that we have covered so far?
No,
No. So quick question in regards to, did you guys feel this was of value?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
100%. I'm glad that you were patient enough to go through this exercise and teach and show what the stages and steps are to progress as an individual in the company, and then to see the complete overview in the process that it takes to run a company.
Well, and this is just running a projects.
Exactly.
Yeah, we haven't even got into bonding and OSIPs and insurance and other components that, again, are more expansive that the other team members are working on in regards to this project. But this is just the beginning focus of project management, and this is the expectation where we're at. And I hope it also provided future for you to look at, see what's coming down the pipeline.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys. And on that topic, let me stop.